Well, welcome back to this week's episode of MVP Real Estate Podcast, Season 3, Episode 32. We have Sarah Janzen here from the bright and sunny Toronto. So welcome. Thanks for giving us the time.
Thanks a lot, Mark. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's fun. And we talked a little bit before we started airing, and it was more in the coaching realm is where you focus on, correct?
Yeah, so my husband and I have an online business where we do coaching and training, predominantly in the career space, but it's a lot of mindset coaching to get people where they want to be in their career. But you and I got connected on the real estate side of things because I guess, I've had a couple of careers, but I've always been a moonlighter in renovations. And I'm in my 40s now, but I bought my first house on my own as a single, young single woman at 24. And it was super, super scary. So I have this soft spot in my heart for renovations. And I believe I think it's a big, scary world for a lot of women and a lot of young women. And for me, it's been pretty lucrative. And it's actually allowed me to leave the 9 to 5 and, jump into entrepreneurship. So it's provided me a lot of freedom.
Yeah. It's cool to see how young you got started, because at 24,
right,
I was managing a bar. That's what I was doing. So
right.
The fear of jumping and investing in a property and flipping it and all that stuff was like way over my head at that point. So kudos to you for getting going early. And it sounds like you kind of stumbled upon it-ish.
Well, interestingly, no, it was actually very, very intentional. So at 24,
Okay, cool.
I think I bought, it was, I forget which one, but I got into I picked up a self-help book, and it was kind of like How to Make Millions. And it ended up being more about your mindset and how to essentially manifest things.
Do you remember what book it was?
I do. It was Millionaire Mindset by T. Harv Eker.
Okay, I will. Well, I'm going to add that to my Amazon cart because I haven't read that one. But I feel like everybody who starts the book has that one, or starts a career or business, has the one keystone book.
That's it. And I was fresh out of, I don't even think I'd finished university. And I had bought this book because I wanted to retire by 35. That was at 20, that was my goal, right? So let's start early. Let's figure out what's the millionaire mindset? And it was less about making $1 million and more about being happy. And it kind of got me set on this thing. But one of the things that along that journey was, they didn't call it manifesting then, but I don't think, anyway, maybe they did, but it was more about how to create your world. And I always wanted to, I think my mom had instilled, real estate was a really good investment. So I always wanted to have real estate. I always wanted to buy. I didn't want to rent. I wanted to own. And so at 24, I had no job. I had no money. I just graduated from university. I had no prospects, but I'm like, I'm going to hire a real estate agent. And any real estate agent who's listening is probably rolling their eyes, because I was that girl who had no way to buy a house. And I enlisted this real estate agent. I'm like, let's go see houses. And I had no money, let alone a budget. And we started going to see houses because I wanted to see what I would like.
Mm-hmm.
We saw some cottages, we saw some, 2-bedroom homes, 3-bedroom homes. I was a single 24-year-old girl. And that's how it started. So I manifested this, or started not realizing what I was doing. And then I entered a golf tournament with my soon-to-be ex-boyfriend. And it was a charity golf tournament, and you had to buy a ticket. I think the entry was $100. Now this is back in the 200s, and I had 2004, I think. I had no money. $100 was a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to do this, but I'll do it because I just want to get this over with, whatever. Entered this golf tournament, and sure enough, I won the final prize, which was a trip for 4 people to go to Scotland for 11 days and golf 8 of the whatever best golf courses in Scotland.
That's a nice $100 trip.
It was great, except I wasn't a golfer. I didn't want to go on this golf trip with 3 other people and whatever. So I cashed it in.
Nice.
And that cash So I think I ended up splitting it with that soon to be ex, and I got $10,000 cash, and that provided me
Dang.
a big first down payment on this
Yeah.
house so I bought the only house I could afford at the time. It was $160,000 on the wrong side of the tracks in this university town that I was living in at the time. And it was a complete dump. And I lost that boy, left the guy. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be a good, post breakup project. So I
Yeah.
renovated the whole house, and then a couple years later sold it for a lot more than I bought it for. And that was how I
Wow.
got into real estate.
You
That's
are
awesome.
amazing.
That is a
Well,
really, really cool story.
thank you. So that has just started me off, and I loved it. I loved the process of renovating. I went from knowing nothing to, doing pot lights and electrical, drywall, plumbing, flooring, you name it. I pretty much did it in that first house. And then, it didn't sell it for a ton, but made some money, and then bought another place, did the same thing with that place, then moved, bought another place, and it's just kind of been up leveling since. Not just my knowledge, but you make a little money and then you reinvest it in the next property.
See, I want to play this podcast for my husband because I'm the crazy girl who's like, Jason, it's not that hard to skim coat walls, right? Because all of our walls were textured. So then he's like, okay, Natasha, why don't you try this little spot? And so I'm like, whatever. So I skim coated all of the walls in our house and it looks amazing. But he was like, I don't think he was very happy with the mess it made, but he would learn.
But so I think there are some things you really have to focus on, and then there's some things I find really meditative. So
Yeah.
I find drywall is meditative, painting is meditative, like
Yes.
those things that you're just doing the same,
Yes.
the same motion.
Yes.
I put on some music late at night, like everyone else in the neighborhood is sleeping, and I'm up at like 1 a.m. drywalling just because it's therapeutic for me. But that's how crazy I am.
Yeah, no, I love it. I've learned so much in my own house just doing some of the projects because my husband, he's good at starting projects, kind of, but he doesn't like to finish them. So then I'm like, that's fine. I'll do it. Just get out of the way.
That's it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I live on the wrong side of the tracks as well too. So.
But if that's the only way you can, so here's the thing, if that's the only way you can get into real estate, I still recommend it. I think the first book I read, they were saying buy the crappiest house on the best street, because that's where you're going to make the most margin. And I still live by that. Don't, because so many people right now, they look for the, the glossy, ready to move in home. And I've always gone, counterculture, I guess. Like I've always looked for the
diamond in the rough.
Diamond in the rough. That I always say I just want good bones. Like everything else I can work with, but I just want good bones. And you start looking for things that you're like, oh, I can fix. Like it's veneer essentially.
Yeah.
And if you can look past that, if you can look past the stains on the rugs and the the holes in the wall that you're going to re-drywall it anyway.
Yeah.
That's been the secret.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the best adventures of going to find a house with a buyer was actually my foreman, because him and I obviously like are on the same mental wavelength, and you can walk in and it's like, okay, we have to look at structures. So we go to the basement first, we make sure the structure is good, floor plan. And then not once did we talk about like wall color or like all that can change. I want to know, like, what are we working with structure wise? All the rest of it can change. Yes, it'll take work. Yes, it will take time. Yes, it will take money, but you can get it to what you want to, as long as the structure is working. And there was a couple that obviously you walk into and floor joists are cut out for plumbing and electrical wires are hanging out without caps on them or covers. It's like
all
weird.
Fixable.
Yeah. And some people buy it because the makeup is great, but you're like, underneath the makeup, your toilet's going to fall through the floor.
Right.
But
no, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there were things I've known. We got a deal on this current house because there were joists in the basement that were literally cut in half, being held together by a 2x4 and a few nails. And we're like, okay, we're going to gut it anyway. We'll replace it. Whereas a lot of people would run for that reason.
Yeah,
you know?
we actually picked one up through like the height of COVID where prices were just, you're offering so much over and you
Stupid.
can't even get it. We got a house like pretty much under what MSRP would be.
Yeah.
And not with the inflated, just a normal market under that, because they didn't hanger the joists in the basement. So they actually cut out a piece of it, attached a ledger, and then put shims in to hold it. So it's all constructed wrong, but that's the
Right.
only thing that's wrong with the basement. So
So you can
it
work
was
with it.
yeah, that stuff you can
Yeah.
fix. Like that's an easy fix. If you talk to the Pro Desk or use YouTube University.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
really it.
100%.
Or if you want to do it the right way, obviously engineering firms out there will help you. We do have an engineering firm on that to sign off. I guess I should give like the legal route so people just don't go around like doing what they want. We did have to get an engineering plan off to sign off. The city does come and inspect it to make sure it's done correctly. So it's not like it's a throw some duct tape on it and it'll work.
I will say that. I will say, disclaimer here, my first renovation, there was no structural changes. It was all cosmetic. But that said, I was, your story reminded me of, that's the one thing I will avoid is when I'm looking to buy a house, and I haven't purchased a lot of homes, but the last one I bought with my husband, and we would go into these okay homes. They'd been kept up or they'd had a renovation 10 or 20 years ago. Those are the ones that I tend to avoid because I want the homes that have not been touched just because I don't want to be paying for someone else's bad reno. I
Right.
want to
Yeah.
get a house that's like has been maintained maybe, but hasn't been updated, so to
Right.
speak.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to do that and I want to put my own style and flair on things.
Sure.
Yeah. My sister, she just got into an awkward conversation with her neighbor.
Oh no.
She had moved in like maybe 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. And she was outside, they're on a walk, and she saw her neighbor at the end of the street talking to him. Hey, how's it going? Oh, we're thinking about redoing our kitchen because it's kind of outdated. And they're like, oh, really? And she's like, yeah, we just want to put like our touch on it. And they're like, well, me and the guy you bought that from just redid the house like 10 years ago. And she's like, oh, sorry.
Oh.
Because she does want to gut it. She doesn't like the flip that they did with it. Like she doesn't like the color
Right.
schemes and the countertops but it was like, I didn't mean to insult you. We just want to put our touch on it. But yeah, it was no structural thing. It was just she wants to put her touch on it, kind of like what you just did.
Of course. Yeah.
But now that we've eaten up like half the show just talking about real estate, I want to get into what you do. So, all right, coaching. That is your main focus, correct?
Yeah.
And you
That's
go
right.
through all different industries.
Yeah.
Or
So
what industries do you kind of like specify as your niche?
Well, interesting. So what we focus on right now is usually we help guys get their mojo back. Professional men who have lost their mojo, we help them get their career mojo back. So predominantly our main focus is men in their 40s and 50s who've been super successful or super ambitious and they've kind of plateaued or they have they're not rising through the ranks as quickly as they'd like, or they get to their 40s and 50s and they're like, is this all there is? And some of them want to make a pivot and we help them. My husband does a lot of the coaching on that. I'm coming off of having 2 little babies.
Oh.
So I'm about to start my own area of coaching, but that's what we do. We went online right before COVID, a year before COVID. So it was perfect timing, but we work with guys in the UK, in the US, in Canada, and that's what we do.
That's
sweet.
amazing.
Was that like a necessity of the time? Like you weren't going to keep doing real estate, or you saw trends happening and you wanted to pivot yourself? Or like when you were doing your real estate and your other jobs, like what was the light bulb that was like, no, we're going into coaching. This is the direction we're taking.
Well, real estate was never my full-time gig. That was always where I moonlighted. So, it's interesting. I know you have, this whole podcast is on real estate, and I'm sure most of your guests are like focused on real estate or fixed. It's always been my side gig, and I'd call it a hobby, although I've made money. So I guess you could say it's like side hustle. But when I was 24, I had a 9 to 5. I was in pharmaceuticals, and I had a 9 to 5, and I was a sales rep. So my job was very flexible. Um, and I was always doing the corporate gig until probably 7 years ago. And it was when I paid off through investing and fixing up real estate, I finally made it, along with my 9 to 5. I finally paid off my condo at the time. And that was it. I'm like, okay, so now that my condo's paid off, I don't have a mortgage anymore. Now I can take that leap of faith and go out and do my own thing. And that's how real estate has really helped me um, become an entrepreneur and do other things that I love, because I've always done well in real estate. It's kind of been it's helped me along, so to speak.
Yeah. Have you been a coach previously, like with kids, or were you an athlete? Like, where did that inspiration to like lead people come from?
Good question. I think, with when I was in sales and marketing and pharmaceuticals, and I always just really liked helping people be the best that they could be in whatever role that they were and whatever their goals were. And when I left corporate, when I left pharma, because I became really disillusioned with corporate, the 9 to 5 in general, as well as pharmaceuticals, but that's a whole other story. I my my passion has always been to help women really become the most that they can be, and you know, not be tied by their own fears and inhibitions. So it's how, I would love for every woman to get into real estate, just because if they can, find a way to get into it, if they enjoy it. For me, it's been, I love it. I'm really passionate about it. I walk into a house and I'm like, what would I do differently? How do I like this layout? How do I not? For me, it's that. But for every woman to find their own way of doing things, and not just, and I guess the big thing is not be intimidated by it. And I think that was in real estate, there's a lot of intimidation, especially with young women. It can feel very intimidating. Um, and so my business, how did I get into coaching? Because I wanted to help women entrepreneurs realize their full potential. But I'm really passionate about women not being intimidated by the contractors that come in and, give ridiculous quotes, because they
Can
see
we
the
pause on that for a second? Because that gets
we
me
can.
angry.
I feel like
can.
I should just log off on this one. You guys got the rest of the show here.
That gets me so angry. So a lot of times I hire the contractors because my husband's busy at work. Like, he has so much other stuff on his plate. I work from home. And what gets me is when I start talking to the contractors, and then the contractors stop looking at me and start looking at my husband. And I'm like, wait a second here. It's my design idea. It's what I want out of this. Like, why are you just naturally referring back to him? Like, oh, it just irks me. All right.
Well, I can totally relate to that. When we bought our house 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, and we gutted it. We gutted our place down to the studs. So there, at one point, there was no water, there was no plumbing, HVAC, electrical. Like, we
Mhm.
fully gutted it. And I was the GC. I was the general contractor for that project. Although men, I shouldn't say that. Contractors didn't
I'm
realize
feeling
that
attacked here.
no, and you really
No,
shouldn't,
I'm just
because
kidding. I'm just kidding.
contractors didn't realize that. They would come in and they would talk to us, and my husband had no experience in renovations. He'd never owned a home that he'd lived in. He had, a couple rental properties, but he had never been part of, and this was my fourth property, I guess, fourth or fifth property, and I'd always been hands-on. And so they learned very quickly that I was the one who was asking the right questions, who was, I was the one helping most of them solve problems along their way, and I think this is, maybe I take too much pride in this, but when they came to me and said, well, we can't do that. And I'm like, well, you can if you do this and this and this. And they're like, oh yeah, you're right. We can do that. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to do it. Go,
Yeah.
Go
but
along.
I think I also had the chutzpah. Like, I also had the um, lack of a better term, balls. I had the confidence to do it, right? That I would stand toe to toe with some of these guys, and I'm still learning. I've still let guys, you know, take control of the reins in areas I shouldn't have. But you learn as you go, and you make some mistakes, and you win some, and hopefully at the end you're a step ahead, either in education or money, or ideally both.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are. I have to say, I know that idea and that concept is out there. I know that male contractors in general will go with other men because they're supposed to be the builders. In my perspective, I've got it flipped. Like my key contact at Home Depot, like we were talking about, the pro desk, female. And she's always on the ball with like what we're looking for, different ideas. Like I know she knows what she's talking about. The lady that's helped me with cabinets, female. Our interior designer, female. The other part of the ownership in the company, female. So I've got a lot of female influences within the company that I will happily let them take the reins on the things that they want to take the reins on, like marketing. Natasha's going to kill me every time in marketing. I'm not going to make things look better than she does.
And I don't want to make this a female male thing. Like it's not a man versus woman thing. In the industry, like I've worked with some fantastic contractors, like just amazing contractors who see me as a partner and have always seen me as a partner. Like that's so. I don't want to make that broad generalization.
Yeah.
But the generalization that I will make is that a lot of women who want to do things and maybe not have as much money to hire people, or they do, but they're intimidated by the whole reno space. That's the piece I do feel comfortable saying. There's a lot of opportunity for women to step up to the plate and take things on, do things, as you said, Natasha, you're skimming the walls yourself. There's a lot of stuff that we can do that is really not, it's not going to do any damage. Like you can do a lot of mistakes with drywall and not cause any issue. Like there's nothing that can't be unfixable with drywall, right? There are things that you can do, or paint. I would even say, I ventured in now, huge disclaimer, but electrical for me was like, you turn off the, you follow the instructions, you turn off the panel. So, kids are away, like you're not doing this with any distractions, but there's a lot you can do on your own, like switching light bulbs, switching, plugs and outlets, things like that really aren't, I'm not going to, I've never wired my entire house. I've never plumbed my own house, but I'm comfortable if I have to, I don't know, something's leaking. I'll be the one to check it out first before hiring a plumber or calling the plumber.
Sure.
Yeah. And you save a lot of money, and you save a lot and the other thing is, I will say, if you start learning how to do this yourself, or you do a little bit of education on how it's done, then the quotes that you get from contractors, you start to see whether that's worth it or not, right? And you start to say, okay, am I willing to pay that, or can I do it myself? Or maybe I can do it myself, but it's totally worth having someone else do it for you.
Right.
Yes. Right. And I've personally ran into a lot of those situations where I'll learn how to do it, I'll do it, and I'll be like, yes, and it does still pay to have somebody else do that.
100%. But the other thing is, like for this, we recently did a major reno on our home. So we bought our home 5 years ago. We gutted it. We did everything we wanted to at the time, and then we had 2 kids, so we had to expand. So we did another major reno, and our drywallers that we hired, there was a new team. It wasn't the team that we had 4 years ago. It was a new team who, dropped the ball and left us with a final sand that wasn't done the day before the painters were supposed to come here.
Really?
And we were at the cottage, so we're like, is it done? Is it done? They're like, yeah, we're all good. And stupid of me, silly of me, I'd paid them the majority of the money. We came home and we're like, oh, there's a final sand that needs to be done. Luckily, my husband and I could do it, right? So you're not intimidated. You're not like, you can fill in the gaps when things aren't done to plan. And I know, Marcus, I see you looking at the clock. I don't know where we're at.
I had to turn on my dog collar for my yard, so I apologize.
No worries.
No, I wasn't looking at the clock. I did have a thought on that though. what you were talking about before with like the fear of women like stepping up and taking the role and doing those things. There's actually one specific person on Instagram that I do follow. She's from Canada, so I don't know if you've heard about her, but Investor Girl
Love
Brit.
her.
Oh, cool.
She
I
is
don't know
so-
about her. I'll check her
So
out.
active on Instagram,
Yeah.
always like creating new things, and like she's buying properties, she's syndicating with other people.
Yeah.
Like she is active.
Cool.
Yep.
She's a go-getter. And
Mhm.
I first heard about her on Bigger Pockets, the podcast for like all real estate everybody. She
Very
was
cool.
on the show like 4 or 5 times, and I'm like, all right, I got to start following her. And then from there, it's like there's some female that does tile, there's a female that does electrical, and all these people on Instagram that I'm following, and I don't care if it's male or female, like they're
No.
giving out great information. So like I'm here to take
And
it
that's
all
the
in.
thing. I don't I mean, we've kind of gotten into the gender thing in term, but it's not about the contractors and the people doing the work. For me, it's about the homeowner. Like if you're a homeowner, if you're if you have the means and you're looking at getting into real estate, but it seems really scary. And who am I to be a young 20-something-year-old, person getting into real estate? Or can I afford it? Or the only thing I can afford is this dilapidated or, rundown home.
Yeah.
For me, that's my message is, if you have the inclination, if you're interested at all, there's a lot of opportunity for young women or women in general to really step up in the real estate and renovation game.
For
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree. So do you take more of like the female leadership and your husband takes the male? Not to do like a more of a divide, but now you're talking about female, but before we were talking about empowering like the male in career shifts. Like,
so that's
is that a
that's what
paradigm that you guys work with, or is that it just we stumbled upon it during the conversation?
it happens to be true. But what, and I want to say, why is that? I think because my husband was drawn to helping anyone. He has male, female clients, but there's
Yeah.
one particular niche of the area that we help, that he's created this program and helps people, that it tends to be, without going into too much detail, a lot of men who reach that plateau in their 40s and 50s, and traditionally it was called like midlife crisis. But a lot of it, when it's related to your career, oftentimes it's because men have lost touch with that masculine edge that they have within them, that has really allowed their career to take off. And at some point, we find that either they've had a major divorce that's like rocked their confidence, they've lost a job, had a really bad boss. Sometimes they've had to take the caretaker role, like their parents are getting sick and so they take the caretaker role, or their wife takes on this crazy empowering career, and then they don't know where they stand in everything. So not to generalize everything, but a lot of it made sense to focus on men specifically, given the nature of how we want to help these people.
That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And for women, it's different. Like I would argue for women who have, lost their edge in their 40s and 50s, I wouldn't help them focus on their masculinity, right? Like that would be probably the opposite. So it's a matter of how we're helping people versus just wanting to focus on one or the other.
Right.
Yeah. And obviously a lot of things change from when, let's say, these males that are in their 50s that have, lost their confidence from when they started. Usually, and this is a very big generality, the people that are 50 in those positions are usually those that are in their 20s, 30s, like power, like I'm going to get there. And then when you
100%.
reach there, it's like, okay, now I'm here, but like, do I still have to drive like I drove when I was 20, 30 to get to where I'm going to when I'm 70? Like it's a weird position to be in.
And
or a lot
I'm
of
not
guys,
there yet, so I can't speak.
yeah,
from
or a lot of guys
example,
say, I have a lot more to give in me. Like I'm not ready to retire, and yet I don't have the confidence to step up, or something's happened in their life that's thrown them off kilter, and they just need to regroup and recenter.
Yeah. There was something that, and I can't remember what book or podcast I read it from, but it was basically once you stop learning, you're done progressing.
Mhm.
Like, do you find that these people that are their 40s, their 50s have stopped like the edge of learning? Like, have they
Not
stopped
always.
Okay.
Not always. And I would make that, there's a lot of people who are, constant seekers and that's it. But that doesn't, it's one thing to intellectually understand things, and it's another thing to put it into practice. And I think that's why, that's why our coaching and training, it's bridging that gap. It's you can know a lot of things intellectually or read the books, but how to put that into place, or even just having, I don't know if you guys play sports. I grew up playing sports. My husband's a huge, big athlete. Um, there's something about having that coach on the sidelines who sees the whole
Mhm.
game and has a different
Sure.
perspective. You're in there, and all you can see is your little laneway,
Yep.
and a coach can see the whole field.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That was the biggest thing, and I couldn't even put it into words until you just said it. But when I was working like a W-2 job and I had a manager and a boss, I never looked to them to give me the answer, but they
Right.
were there to get me to like push and to stay on focus, to stick with the game plan. Like, remember all the things that we practice, we got to keep doing those things. When you're off on your own, like, you look to the sideline, like, you're a coach player. You are the
That's it.
person that's coaching. And that's a very weird dynamic.
Yeah.
Like, when you don't want to wake up in the morning, it's not like I roll over and I'm like, all right, what is my boss going to say when I ask for a day off? Like, there is none of that. Like, you are going to work every
Yeah.
day.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No,
It's a
exactly.
really weird position to be in. Um, so your coach analogy, like, that really, I don't know, hit home with me when you said it.
Good. Good. I mean, I'm a big believer. I've always had coaches, one or mentors one way or the other. I'm a huge believer. Um, if, and it's a big if you have ambition for your life, and not everyone does, but if you really want to get further in, and I don't mean just career, right? Like I'm, I want, my message is for women who are ambitious in their entire life, whether that's career, relationships, being a good mom, being a good friend, being a good, daughter. If you have ambitions to be better, which I do, then oftentimes a coach is the best way to get there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
do you have like a system, you and your husband? Is it a like a system that you have created, or is it all like, okay, this is a unique situation. Let's find out
Both.
about you, and okay, so both type
It's got to be both. It's got to be both. I mean,
cool.
it's not a cookie cutter situation. Nothing. I mean, everyone has their unique situation, but we have a process, and we have a process that we take people through, and it's individualized, and we have a program that's unique for those, for people who we identify that would be a good fit for that program, and then other people are a better fit for just one-on-one coaching, and it really depends on what they need, what their outcome and desire is, and we
Yeah.
help them, one, determine what that is, and then help them find the right process for them.
Yeah. I
Awesome.
was just talking to my friend that I actually played baseball with in college. He is now in psychology out in California. And when I
Okay.
was through my psychology department, the biggest, newest thing was CBT, the
Right.
cognitive behavioral therapy. That was the
Yep.
thing. Here is your plan. This is how we work through it, and we're going to get to
Yep.
the other side, and we're going to be better. But now
Yeah.
he is now specializing in DBT, which, have you heard of that? Because this was
No.
new to me as of 2 weeks ago. But it's dialectic behavioral therapy. So it is like everybody has its own situation. We need to find out what they're struggling with and what the best game
Right.
plan for that person is, rather than
Right.
saying, here's the mold, fit inside this circle, and this is how we're going to get you to the other side, which I thought was
Right.
super cool because it's way more personal. In I mean, a lot of the struggles that we're seeing now is that not everybody's going to fit into this box that you want to check. Like the school systems where everybody
Totally.
needs to do the same thing all the time. And it's like every kid is so different.
For
So,
sure. And I think it's a good balance of both, right? Because
yeah,
there's we see patterns. So not every kid is the same, not every 40-year-old man is the same, but there are patterns. And I think part of the challenge is that a lot of people think they're doing it on their own. Like, they are, a big misconception is, you are so unique that you're the first person who's ever felt this way. And I've heard people say that about divorce. It's like, 50% of the population goes through divorce, and yet when you're in it, you feel like you're utterly alone. And
Yeah.
so when you are a 50-year-old man, and I'm just using this because that's part of who we work with, if you're a 50-year-old man who, had your career trajectory on, you were CEO, you were on the C-suite path, and all of a sudden you're 50 and you're nowhere close to that, and your current boss doesn't see the potential that your boss when you were 30 did, you really feel alone. And I think that's part of why having someone who can understand those patterns, understand and help you see that you're not alone, but also has a process to help you get back to wherever you want to get. So everyone
Yeah.
is unique. There's different reasons people got there. There's different things that they're struggling with. But to have someone have that experience and have the tools and the wherewithal to coach you to where you want to go is it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
For sure.
And it's crazy how many times those thoughts pop up when you're going through something traumatic or a struggle or something like that. The expectations that you had, like you were saying, that 50-year-old man, the projection was like CEO gonna happen.
That's right.
And now he's 50, not there yet. And he's like, what is the issue? What did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Like you
And it
put the
doesn't even,
expectation out there, but what else did you do? Like, do you have kids now where you didn't have kids before? Like, did you coach, like the little things? Did you
That's
coach
it.
any of their games or their teams? Like that took away from hours you could have been at work.
Well, and this is the thing, and I use that example of like C-suite, the C-suite path, but there's some guys who actually have reached their potential in terms of their title, but they're stressed, they're overworked, they're burnt out, and they're not being the dad that they want to be at home or the husband they want to be, and the rest of their life is crumbling because they're like gripping, just hanging on by a thread at work. So it really depends, but regardless, they're not where they want to be,
Yeah.
and so they come to us looking for a way back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man. Well, that's cool that there's a service out there, because I know I listen to podcasts all the time that kind of talk about the balance and obviously self-help books that you've mentioned, which we have to, did you get the name of that one? Because we got to put that in the show notes.
I'll send it to Natasha afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because
no problem.
the book that I read right when I started was The Subtle Art. Have you ever read that one?
Of giving
Subtle Art of, yeah.
Yeah.
We can swear in this show.
Oh, can you? I
Who's
wasn't
the
sure.
owner on this show? Can they swear? Yeah, we can. So
It really depends on, you have to put a disclaimer on the podcast, like that there are, that's the only thing. Apple gives
I don't know
you
if
Apple.
we've sworn yet. So we'll keep
Okay.
it PG.
Keep it clean.
Subtle
Keep
Art
it
of
clean
Not
just so
Giving a
Apple
Freak.
likes you.
What is it?
Yeah.
Keep
Just
it
so
clean.
Apple likes you.
Yeah.
Right. So Spotify doesn't shut us down here.
That's right.
But no, that book was my keystone book of like getting going, because it was, I've got to put down all of the what ifs and the, oh my gosh, what are people thinking, and just focus on what specifically I want to give energy to. Because there was one example in it where you've got 100% battery at the start of each day, and everything you do takes percentages of that battery, and you only have 100%, and that's all the freaks you can give in a day. So choose them wisely.
Completely. And know
I'm
how to
hoping
recharge
that when
that
I'm
battery.
50, I don't have that what if still lingering, but I feel like it's just a normal part of progressing.
It doesn't have to be, but it can be. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. Yeah.
If you give that energy early on,
right,
to prevent it.
I think also, if you get so far out of alignment, if you maintain that alignment, throughout your life, it's one thing. But if you stop listening to that voice, or if you get derailed, then that's another thing. Or if you let your mindset, go kaput.
Yeah. Not doing the things that you did when you started.
Well, that's it. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Man.
Anyway,
well,
we got derailed from real estate, but I think the big thing, the big
fine.
message is, oh really?
Oh yeah, we've had non-real estate specific people on the show before. It's weird because we found out as we've done the show that real estate is really just a catch-all, because everybody in some way is touched to real estate. So like if you coach people that are in real estate businesses, like there is real estate. We've had another therapist from, I believe she was from Minnesota, but she works with, wasn't she from Minnesota?
I don't remember.
Because we went to the same grade school. I don't know how that happened.
Oh, that's right.
We did. And then I think she moved to Minnesota through school. but she worked with real estate people, but she does like kids and adults within therapy. So we have like the gamut of everything. So
Yeah.
nothing was derailed at all.
No.
Okay, good. Good. I guess, I mean, if I were to bring it back to real estate though, even though you said we don't have to, it's like that has been a great investment tool for me and a passion. It's kept me, you know, in my 20s. That's what I did. I renovated when other people were out partying and spending their money on, you know, booze and booze and other stuff. I was at Home Depot and I was renovating my home, and it became a really good unintentional investment platform that allowed me then to pursue my passions when I wanted to leave the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Much better spent than booze and Taco Bell, which is what I'm
I
guessing
think so.
was the highest budget at that age.
Yeah, I think so, but that's just me.
No, I wish I would have gotten started earlier, because there's been people on the show and that I've talked to that are like, oh yeah, I bought my first house in college or right after college. I'm like,
That's it.
oh, if I would have done that.
Yeah, I know.
Well, and most people say, oh, it's too expensive, and I get it. If you have no money, you have no money. I mean, I feel like I manifested it, truthfully, but there's always ways to get in, right? Like whether it's, and I would say I've had people ask me the same thing. It's like, you know, we live in Toronto. Toronto is really expensive. It's up there with like New York and San Francisco, and you know, you can get a 1-bedroom condo for $1 million, right? Like not. Like
I think I just compared Toronto to New York on the last episode.
You did.
Right. Like
I'm pretty
it's
sure
not
I just
cheap.
did.
It's so I have a lot of, you know, friends' kids who come to me saying, you know, where should I start? And if you can't get into Toronto real estate, which a lot of people can't, I say go to the outlying towns. Like go to a large town or small city where there's university, so you know there's always going to be rental opportunities. Buy something there. Like just get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
And be smart about it, but get your foot in the door, because I mean, who knows, we might be in a bubble, everything's going to crash. It depends where you are, but I just think if you're following your heart and you're doing it, you're not speculating, but you're buying something that you would live in, like you yourself would live there, there's always going to be someone who will rent from you.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
You know, so yeah.
And the one thing I've noticed from like the college area, university area rentals, they usually don't care if the countertops match the paint color in the kitchen.
Right?
They don't care at all.
No.
They don't care. And I would even say, like, if you're going to be really smart about it, then go somewhere with the graduate program. And so you can specifically look at people who are a little more mature, a little more school focused versus partying. Like you're not going to be renting it to 18-year-old, out from under their parents' home for the first time, but someone who's like studying for med school, like that's the person you want in your condo.
Yes, it is.
Things like that. Not that you can choose, but if you're gonna make it your way, why not?
Right.
See, you shouldn't have left real estate. You still got it.
I love it. That's why I love it.
Good.
That is awesome. Well, I mean, it's crazy the path that everything is taken from a ex-boyfriend forcing you to go to a golf outing. So kudos to that guy wherever he's at.
Right?
But
so grateful. So grateful.
It worked out perfectly.
It did.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. We've hit our hour, and I usually stop it there. But I feel like we can definitely have another show, start diving into, because what I wanted to get into was kind of like, all right, from when they contact you, like, how do you take them through, and how do they, like, is there an end period, or what is the whole?
What are you talking about? In real estate, like, or our business?
In your coaching, someone comes to you and is like, hey, I'm 40, I'm not where I want to be. Like, how does that, because I've never been in that situation. I've got so many questions directly in your training without giving out like the secret sauce, obviously.
So we'll have to have you back on next year.
I was gonna say, have me, or I'll introduce you to my husband who does more of that specific coaching. You can talk to him.
Or you guys can both.
Yeah,
fun.
This would be like the 4th couple we've had on.
Yeah.
I think that would be fun.
Yeah.
I think that would be fun.
All right, let's do it.
I'll send you an email. Love it.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Thanks very much, both of you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Enjoy your weather this weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Have a great weekend, guys.